This is a Renegade Media Network podcast.
Let me tell you guys about a sponsor of this show, and that is Zippix toothpicks. They are wonderful, flavored toothpicks that have nicotine in each one. You can find them at zippixtoothpicks.com. A lot of you are probably trying to kick a bad habit here in the new year. These are a great alternative to that habit. And come on, let's face it. They're sponsoring this show, so you know that's a good thing. But I'm telling you, they're the cheapest alternative on the market. They've got flavors. Let me tell you, right here, I've got my packet. Zippix toothpicks, spearmint spice. I love this flavor. They've got whiskey flavor. They've got clove flavor. They want to sponsor shows like mine, so that should make you want to give them some business. They've got a promo code, a new one with the Counterflow podcast. The promo code is BUCK, B-U-C-K, of course. So go to Zippix Toothpicks. That promo code, BUCK, will get you 10% off of your order. Once again, zippixtoothpicks.com, promo code BUCK for 10% off your order. They're delicious. They got just the right amount of nicotine in them, and you will enjoy them. Kick that nasty habit, and let's get to the show.
You are now listening to the Counterflow podcast, a place for dissonant voices and unapproved opinions.
You get split in fucking half, cause I call him the hologram wrath. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Here is your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson.
What's up, guys? Welcome back once again to the Counterflow podcast. Yes, you heard it in the intro. I am Buck Johnson, your host and humble narrator. So this is going to be an episode that I want you to be able to pass around to people that might not normally listen to a show like this. And that's because the guest is so good at what she does. And what she does is, well, maybe it's not even specifically what she does on a routine basis, but part of what she does in this episode is reach out to someone who is trapped in the cult, the religious cult of social justice warriorism, we can call it, the social justice cult. And she was in it for 20 years. Can you believe that? And think about, 20 years ago, we are kind of overwhelmed with the craziness of it at this point. She did this for 20 years, and she finally was able to break away from this cult. And now it's kind of like once you're on the outside looking in of a situation that you were neck deep in, eyeballs deep in, you realize how insane and evil it really was, right? So that's what this episode's going to be. It's Keri Smith. She is, well, I'm going to give you her intro here in a minute, but she's so good at describing what this social justice mentality, the cult, the tenets of it. She's so very good at describing all of that stuff. And you probably know a lot of people that are in this. Hopefully you don't, but I certainly do. And you can see the damage it does on their psyche. And it's sad. And a lot of the times you just have to kind of cut these people out of your life because you feel maybe they're a lost cause. But not all of them are. And my guest, Keri Smith, is living proof of that. What a great chat this is going to be. Well, you're going to think it is. I already know it is. Keri is really cool. This was wonderful to chat with her. I'll give you her intro now so you can kind of get the details of who she is and where she's come from. And I think you're going to love this chat. She is founder of Civility Dinners and the co-founder and co-host of the Deprogrammed and Daily Covfefe podcasts at Unsafe Space. A self-described former SJW, that would be social justice warrior, Keri Smith is best known for her work in addressing her old belief system through writing and lectures. Her essays on leaving her former ideology have been shared by Jordan Peterson, Stephen Hicks, and Sargon of Akkad, and praised by Joe Rogan. Her writing has been featured at fee.org and the Dissenters Project, a collection of essays on the price of dissent in our current culture. I rebranded this podcast here as the Counterflow to get people that speak truth, counter to the establishment narrative. And Keri Smith certainly does that. Welcome to the show, Keri Smith. Thank you for being here. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you, Buck, for having me.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to meet you, someone else in Texas.
I know. I started researching you and I kind of thought, how have I not run across her before, even in entertainment circles, because we're going to get to that. But I come from the music world in Austin, Texas. For 20 years. Now because of what's gone on, I've moved out of Austin, Texas, and I've not played since February 2020.
Wow.
But yeah, let's actually get to some of that, because for those listening that aren't familiar with your story, kind of talk about what you do and where you come from. And of course, we're going to get to the long journey that you've had. But I'm telling about the podcast that you do and all of that kind of thing.
Sure. So I am co-host of a podcast called Unsafe Space, and we do a couple of different shows. We do a live show Mondays and Fridays called Covfefe Break. It was just kind of us talking about current events and whatever people in chat want to talk about. But we also do a show called Deprogrammed, which is more of a deep dive into social justice ideology. So, which is my old belief system. I was in that belief system for about 20 years. And so we talk a lot about that, and we do long form interviews with people for that show. And then we also do just standalone interviews with interesting people. I mean, Unsafe Space is just about trying to foster a community that believes in the principles of free speech and civil disagreement. And we also host a book club, which is one of my favorite things that we do. So every month we read a different book. We alternate between fiction and nonfiction. And then we have live discussions with people in the community who want to be a part of it. So that's I would say right now we're reading Cynical Theories by Helen Pluckrose and James Lindsay, which is nonfiction. And last month we read The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, which is an old sci-fi novel, like a dystopian sci-fi novel by Robert Heinlein. So we do like a real range of books. And so that's a lot of fun.
Was the current environment we're all a part of not dystopian enough for you?
Yeah. Well, what's funny is reading a lot of these dystopian classics now, because I know a lot of people read them in school. That's been a long time for some of us. And so when we first started book club, we started with some of the, the classics that everyone or most people read in school. We started with 1984, Brave New World, Fahrenheit 451, Animal Farm. And reading those books now is so enlightening, because it helps people make sense of what they are seeing, what's going on around them. Look, here's a great example. Animal Farm, they've got this mantra that, once they take over the farm, and then slowly the pigs start to take over, and they start changing the rules to suit themselves, and they start taking more than the sheep and the other animals are getting. They start taking more of the milk and honey and apples, and they start violating their own rules and changing the rules to suit themselves. And what did we see during the lockdowns of this past year? We've seen a lot of politicians who've pushed for lockdowns violate their own orders. We saw the mayor in Chicago say she was going to throw you in jail. She said this on camera, throw you in jail if you violated lockdown. And then, they found out she violated it and went to get a fancy haircut. And what did she say? She said, well, I have to get a haircut. I'm the face of Chicago. That's like the pigs in Animal Farm. They were like, some animals, it started off with all animals are equal, and then it became some animals are more equal than others. That's just politics. Like, it's Steve Adler. That's his name, right? The mayor of Austin. He was in Cabo. He told everyone before Thanksgiving, don't go out for Thanksgiving. Don't see your family. And then what did he do? He took a private plane to Cabo with family. And that's, some animals are more equal than others. So I think the beauty of reading those books now is that it really helps you to distill down like what you're seeing into its essence, like the real hypocrisy. You can identify it more easily, I think. But
where did you grow up? Everyone, this is for my audience that's not in Texas or not from Austin. Every time you meet someone in Austin, you go, where are you from? Because there's always the assumption that, well, no one actually grew up in Austin.
Yeah. I'm from South Carolina originally, but I came here, like a lot of people, I came here via California. I lived in Los Angeles for about 15 years after college, and I moved out to Austin about 4 years ago now.
Oh,
And yeah, I'm slowly getting further and further north, like further away from Austin.
yes.
Like sort of like you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Away from it too now. I'm at, we're going to get into some of that, but it's,
Yeah.
I'm almost embarrassed at this point to say, oh, I'm from Austin, so I don't have to anymore. Um,
Is that where you're from originally?
no, but I moved there in 98. Uh,
Okay.
so, as far as, there's always this joke in Austin, well, if you've been here over 10 years or something, then you're basically an Austinite. And so I definitely saw, it was amazing when I first lived there for years. It was really a cool spot. There was just the right amount of kind of hippie type stuff mixed with
Hmm.
outlaws and bikers and cowboys. And it was a neat music community. And then slowly a lot of this stuff just, I don't know, maybe I grew out of it. It turns me off, a lot of that stuff now.
No, I think it's progressively gotten more woke because I'm like you. I used to visit Austin for work several times a year. I would come out. I worked in entertainment, so
Mhm.
I would come out for comedy and music festivals, and then I also had some good girlfriends in Austin from college and my science and math high school. And so I used to come out like 4 or 5 times a year, and I really felt like it was just a really special place. Like you said, a good mix of people and perspectives and culture. And now it's not just you, it's not that you've grown out of it, it's gotten a lot more woke. It reminds me a lot more of Los Angeles, and it's also gotten more corporate, which happens at the same time. You'll notice all of Congress Avenue. I mean, just in the 4 years I've lived here in the area, Congress has changed so much. They were raising the rent on small businesses there, sometimes 10 times within a year. A lot of those mom and pop shops have closed down, like oh gosh, what was the name? Turquoise Door,
Yeah.
with the bullet.
Yeah.
I think Creatures, the dress shop, did. And they were basically, the owners were like, well, if you can't pay this new rent, Starbucks can. We're
Yeah.
going to put in a Tiffany's across the street.
Right.
like,
Right.
like Beverly
I'll tell you,
Hills.
when I think back, next to the Continental Club on South Congress, maybe the first 5 years I lived here was a gun store, and it was called, I believe, Just Guns.
What?
Could you imagine that now?
No. No.
They would be boycotting, their
Yeah.
windows would be broken. Um,
Yeah.
why? So let's talk about your entertainment background.
Mhm.
For those who aren't familiar with what you did, get into that, because that does have to do with kind of the social justice stuff that
Yeah.
happened in your life as well.
Yeah. So I was a comedy manager and producer. So I managed comedians. I worked at a couple different companies before I started my own with my business partner. And our company was called Whitesmith. We're a very small boutique company. It was just the two of us and a couple of assistants or interns. And we managed, I managed comedians, she managed musicians. So, and then I was based in LA, she was based in New York. And with my comics, I also got to do things like we pitched television shows. I got to produce a late night show called Totally Biased with W. Kamau Bell, who was one of my clients, and several of my other clients wrote for that late night show. We pitched and developed comedy concert films, books, albums, comedy albums. So it was a lot of different things that we were involved in. And I tended to work, not exclusively, but for the most part, I worked with comedians who shared my social justice belief system. So I was, at the time, social justice ideology was not mainstream like it's become now. It wasn't culturally dominant. And so I was kind of, I felt like I was doing, I felt like I was doing good work because I was a true believer in the belief system. I believe that social justice, it sells itself as being this, this ideology that's opposed to racism and sexism, and it's about equality and ending oppression. And I believed all of that stuff. I got into it through the feminist door. There's a lot of different doors that will take you to it. Critical race theory is one of them. Queer theory is one of them. Fat studies is one of them. Mental health justice is now one of them. Environmental justice. There's all kinds of the justice, right? But I got into it through the women's studies door at college. I went to Duke University over 20 years ago now, and that's when I was first introduced to a lot of these ideas. And so when I went into the working world, like a lot of people my age who were indoctrinated with this system of belief at school, I took it with me into my field of work. So I was actively trying to push my belief system through the projects that I worked on, the comedians that I managed, the ideas that I was helping to put out into the world. And a lot of my friends did that, whether they went into the media or they went to work at places like Google, Instagram, like social media companies, or if some of them went back into academia to teach and to indoctrinate more people, but really it is, once you get pulled into this belief system and you become a true believer, it becomes the primary motivating force in your life. It's like a religion in a lot of ways. And so your goal is to push it in whatever it is you're doing. And it becomes, if you get enough people in your organization, whatever your organization is, if it's a company or a church or a hobby group or, a nonprofit group, if you get enough people that believe in this social justice kind of Marxism, then it sort of cannibalizes the group. It's like a parasite. It's parasitic. It takes over and it becomes the primary focus. And it becomes more important than even, like, look at some of the companies that are pushing it since it went mainstream this past year. You see everyone from McDonald's to Amazon to big entertainment studios that are pushing it, comic books that are pushing it, and they're losing money, a lot of them, but they're still doing it. They're still pushing it.
You used a lot of terminology there, and then even referenced it, that it is like a religion, and just the indoctrination and some of the words that you used. I always refer to it as that, but I think maybe I almost do it in a cavalier manner, but I've heard you many times now break it down so well.
Yeah.
Why is it like a religion? Why do you make that comparison, and explain to the average person that's kind of, they hear it's a religion, but what does that mean? Explain that.
Yeah, well, it serves the function, for a lot of people, it serves the function of a religion. It gives them a sense of meaning and purpose, and it gives them a system of morality. It tells them this is a system of morality. They feel like good people when they push it. And it borrows a lot from Christianity, some things from Christianity. So for example, they have something, well, everybody's heard this now because it's gone mainstream, privilege. Your privilege in this belief system functions a lot like the concept of original sin. And you're supposed to confess your privilege. But it's different from the concept of original sin in that they believe people have varying degrees of this sin or privilege based on what race and sex and sexuality they are. So if you're a straight white man, you're going to have more of this kind of original sin, more of this privilege. You're born with more of this privilege than I am. So you have a lot more to atone for. And there's also, they don't really have a concept of grace. You are constantly atoning and having to make a show of your virtue. And one of the ways in which, I say it functions like a religion, but it's actually, it's like a culty religion, because if you go down the cult characteristics and you try and see which ones apply, most of them do, with the exception of there's not one charismatic leader that people can point to, like a Jim Jones or a David Koresh. There's not this like one guy like Charlie Manson or whoever who's leading it. So that, I think, throws people off from being able to identify it appropriately as a cult, because they're like, well, it doesn't, fit this idea of what I have of what a cult looks like. But look at all the other characteristics, like cumulatively, it checks off a lot of them. It tells you to that you should basically isolate yourself from people who don't believe.
Mm-hmm.
They cut off contact with people. If you leave the cult like I did, you're treated as a heretic. They treat you the same way Scientologists treat people who leave.
Mm-hmm.
The same way that the Nexium cult treated people who left. They don't just let you leave easily. You know, you have to be publicly shamed and called all these names, and they will cut contact with you and unfriend you. And people lose family members. They lose friends when they leave wokeness, when they leave social justice. So in that way, it's like a cult. It's also like a cult in that it discourages questions and conversation and dialogue. You're not supposed to ask questions. You're not supposed to notice any of the contradictions or even just the act of trying to have a conversation. They've set up all these things within the belief system to discourage you from even doing that. So they get you to censor yourself so that you don't get mobbed and piled on by your fellow believers. They get you to self-censor. And then if that doesn't work, if you are the kind of person who really insists on understanding better and wanting to have some things cleared up for you, if you vocalize those questions, oh my gosh, you know, that's evidence of your privilege.
Yeah.
You are engaging in oppression just by asking these questions. They have like all manner of things that they'll say about you when you start to question things. So
Do you think, how do I phrase this? Is there something mentally with some of the I mean, you could always pick that with any movement, but it almost seems like there's a darkness to some of that mentality. Did you witness, now that you're out of it, do you look back and go, okay, I could see some of the deeper issues that are going on with a lot of these people?
yes, absolutely. And that it may put some people off to hear me say this, but I often call it evil, this belief system. I do believe it's evil because it's not just that it's a collectivist and racist and sexist belief system. It's that it takes well-intentioned people and it turns them into mouthpieces for the very things they think they're opposing.
Yeah.
And I think when you're living in that kind of unconscious way and you're living in that dishonest way, part of you deep down knows it. Even if the cult tactics are working and keeping you from actively questioning and have gotten you to shut off your brain for the most part, you deep down, you know it. And so a lot of people in it struggle with mental health issues. And here's a weird part of it, because I should back up. So I often compare it to Marxism. And so a good way of thinking about it is like, you know, Marxism, classical Marxism that we learn about or hopefully learn about in school. A lot of us don't. That's why this is a problem. But Marxism says the best way to look at the world is as a struggle for wealth among class groups. Well, this belief system says, no, it's a struggle for power between identity groups. But the tactics are the same. They believe in redistributing power among groups instead of redistributing wealth. They talk about oppressors versus the oppressed. It's kind of a mutated form of Marxism. And so because it's based around identity and power, and within the ideology, you get almost a kind of social credit the more of these oppressed groups you can check off. So they say everything, you need to look at the entire world as this struggle between identity groups or power. And so everything gets put into a category of oppressed or oppressor. And if you can check off more of the oppressed groups, you get a greater voice in the ideology. So because of that, there's all these new identities evolving. And so you get, like, for example, I mentioned fat studies. Fat studies is now a part of it, where they say you are the oppressed if you're fat and you're the oppressor if you're not. And so fat becomes this marginalized, oppressed identity that you can claim to have more credit in the belief system. And same thing with mental health. This is what I was working up to, is they now say if you have mental health issues, you're oppressed and you're marginalized. And so therefore, the messed up thing about that is it encourages you to stay in any kind of mental health issues you have instead of working on it, because it tells you that's your identity. That's who you are. You see on Twitter, people put it in their bios. They're like, I am Black, trans, queer, fat, bipolar disorder, BPD, anxiety, and depression. It's like, what?
Yeah.
That's not who you are, though. That's not who you are. And you're going to stay there because you think it is, So I think it encourages people to stay in unhealthy behaviors. And I know I'm talking quite a bit, but there's something you said about the darkness. This belief system thrives on resentment. And it took me a long time to see that, but it thrives on this sort of entitled, resentful, bit of human nature that, if left unexamined, can eat you up and make you just a really unhappy, negative force in the world. And it tells you those things are okay. Can you imagine? Instead of saying, you need to let go of some of that resentment and learn how to handle it, and learn how to, like, the antidote to that would be gratitude, right?
Right.
It actively discourages you from feeling gratitude or joy. If you are in this cult, if you're deep in it and you post things on social media, like an expression of joy, like something good that's happened to you in your life, or something you want to celebrate with friends,
Yes.
you can find yourself at the end of a social justice mob where they're like, this is the inappropriate time. Did you know that XYZ happened today? How dare you? This is your privilege that allows you to feel this joy.
Yeah.
Like, what?
I've actually seen people proud about losing weight and saying, I've lost some weight, but then they have to back it with, but I realize that not everyone is in my mindset, and people think big is beautiful. And so you're getting to where normal people can't even just celebrate, hey, I lost weight and I feel healthier.
No, you can't. I've seen that so many times. They'll get angry. I've seen them get angry at fellow feminists in the movement if a woman in the movement posts about that, about any goals that she set for getting physically fit, and if she shares an update. Of so many times they've been piled on, like, that's, how dare you? This is triggering. I don't want to see anything about your weight loss. You're normalizing, weight loss. You're normalizing working out and kind of, stuff like that.
I love that word, normalizing.
Yeah.
Talk about how you used to feel when you were in this, when you walk into a room. I've heard you go on about that, and I think that's an interesting detail.
Yeah. So, like I said, it's a system of belief. It's an entire ideology, and it tells you that, the world is this competition for power between these identity groups. And so you need to find the hidden racism and sexism in everything, that everything is racist and sexist or fatphobic or transphobic, and all the isms, they're always there. And so the way I've talked about in the past is, it's a bit like putting on glasses every day, where you're just putting on these glasses and you're looking at the world through these lenses, and you're trying to find the racism and sexism. And it really kind of, this is why you see this constant outrage culture that we're in, because so many people are wearing these glasses now. They're constantly looking to be offended, and it makes them feel righteous to be offended. I'm one of the righteous oppressed. Or if they're in one of the oppressor groups, the so-called oppressor groups, then they get to feel, they get to virtue signal, and they get to shed some of their privilege and apologize for some of their privilege and confess some of their privilege by being one of the good white people who sees the racism everywhere, right? And who calls out other people and for being racist, like that. It gives them a sense of a very cheap sense of virtue.
Yes.
But it also, I think it's unhealthy, to go back to the mental health thing. It's unhealthy because when I was in it, like I would walk into an entertainment, for example, I always had this assumption that I was going to be treated differently because I was a woman. And sometimes I think I was, but other times I think I was just reading into it and looking for it. I was going in with this attitude, and you kind of invite, I don't know, I don't know if I believe in the law of attraction necessarily, but I think sometimes you can create the very situation that you fear the most. You think about like a really possessive girlfriend, for example, who's always just over the top, like possessive and paranoid, and thinks that you're cheating all the time. And then, that kind of person can maybe drive you to eventually leave her or to cheat, because it's just so oppressive. It's like that kind of, and so in that situation, I'm giving that example. It's like that person fears being left and being left alone and abandoned and being cheated on and being lied to, and they actually cause it to come into fruition because they're so over the top about it. I think that happens sometimes with people in social justice. Is they walk into a room looking to be treated differently because of race or sex or sexuality, and they're just setting themselves up to have like negative interactions. They believe that there's going to be a power imbalance, and so they act out their part of that,
Yeah.
It's weird.
I want to tell you guys about one of my favorite sponsors, and that is Lucky Guy Bakery over at luckyguybakery.com. You already know this because you've heard me talk about them before. They make the world's greatest brownies with flavors like, well, my personal favorite, the Oatmeal Jackson, which is made with white chocolate and cranberries. They've got the peanut butter bonanza bar. Of course, they've got the iconic brownie with dark chocolate slabs. And think about this. Speaking of that, Valentine's Day is coming up. What a perfect way to surprise and impress your lady or your man. Get them some of these wonderful brownies. You know they're going to pair well with a good wine. And what will that lead to? Well, you can thank me later. And one way that I am going to help you out with this, I've got a promo code for you. That is BUCK, Buck. When you enter that promo code, after you're done shopping at luckyguybakery.com, you will get 20% off of your order. How cool is that? They've got gift boxes over there. You can order the 4-pack, the 6-pack. You can customize your gift box, and each one of them comes with a personalized note made by the people over at Lucky Guy Bakery. So I've got you all set up for Valentine's Day, guys. Thank me later. luckyguybakery.com. Promo code BUCK gets you 20% off of your order. Let's get back to the show.
And maybe this is because I was in Austin, and let's face it, the demographics in Austin aren't particularly diverse as much as some would like to pretend that they are. But I did see often, I would kind of see people in this movement, and I thought, there sure are a lot of white women in this.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, in your experience, is that kind of the prevailing demographic?
I made a joke about this on Trigonometry, where they asked, like, what do you think it was about you that made you susceptible to this belief system? And I joked, well, I'm a woman. But it's only a half joke, because I do believe women are a little more susceptible to it, because, women on average, I hope everyone understands averages.
Yes.
Women on average self-report that they're more interested in working with people than with things, right? Mm-hmm. Women on average on the Big Five personality, they score higher. We score higher in neuroticism and in agreeableness. That's not true for every woman. That's how averages work. There are women who that doesn't fit for them. It does fit for me. I think I score pretty high on neuroticism and agreeableness. But those things make you, especially the agreeableness part, it appeals to women's desire to be interested in people, to protect people, to stand up for people who are being mistreated, because it says this is a belief system about ending racism and sexism and about standing up for the oppressed. Right. And so it appeals to people who want to protect, like, the underdog. Jordan Peterson has talked about this before, and he sort of was just, I think he was kind of thinking out loud, but he was saying maybe there's something there with women with the innate biological drive to protect their young and to protect children that kind of can get taken and pushed sideways into this, something like this. It can manifest in an ideology like this, where that is sort of being tapped into in a way to get women to get involved and to go and protect. They think they're protecting the oppressed people. What actually ends up happening is that you get a lot of white women in it and you get a lot of elite people. That's another thing. Yes. This is like a luxury belief system, because, I learned it at Duke University. People learn this at very elite institutions in academia. And it's only in the past 10 to 15 years that it's trickled down into public schools. It's in public schools now. I didn't learn it in elementary school. Thank goodness. I did not learn it in high school. But now kids are learning it as young as kindergarten. Mm-hmm. And so that's going to change things a little bit. But the people who are my age, who've been pushing it, a lot of them, they learned it in college. And And so you get a lot of these elite, actually, I would say privileged people who latch onto this. Some of that I think probably comes from, like, look at some of the people who are famous in the ideology. Peggy McIntosh, she's a white woman who coined the phrase white privilege back in the 80s. She wrote an essay called Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack. And Peggy McIntosh was very wealthy. She was, I think, in the 1% of people in terms of wealth. She lived a very privileged life. And I think there's something about people who come from that kind of privilege wanting to share maybe any guilt that they have over that kind of privileged life with an entire race of people, or with an entire sex of people. Then you feel like you're sharing this thing with others. Like Morgan Spurlock, for example, I've mentioned him before. You saw a version of this during Me Too, when he kind of did his confession about women he had behaved inappropriately with sexually. And he confessed to all these different things he had done. And then at the end of his confession, instead of taking personal responsibility for this, he decided to make it about all men. It's like, we men this, we men do this, we men need to do this, we men. Like, no. I know that's very comforting to suddenly share the blame for your personal behavior, but I think that's why it's appealing to people. It's they can transfer whatever personal guilt or shame or responsibility they have, and like share it collectively with a whole group of people.
You mentioned it's in elementary school that it triggered a memory here. I was just hanging out with a friend, and she's a nanny. I believe she was having kind of a play date with another nanny, but whatever the case was, there was a child involved that's about 4. And so she saw some of the books at this other house with the nanny and for the 4-year-old. And there was now one for that age group written by Ibram X. Kendi.
I know which one you're talking about. Is it Anti-Racist Baby?
Something like that.
Yeah.
And she said she was like horrified. And she's like, I'm trying to snap a picture. Like, oh my God, I can't believe this is real. And for a 4-year-old.
Let me tell you you have to laugh at stuff like that because it's so over the top. But at the same time, it's like there's a balance of laughing, but also taking it seriously. Ibram X. Kendi is one of, I call them the high priests and priestesses of the movement. I took that from my friend, Gracie West, who's another former social justice warrior. But there is no one charismatic leader, but there's several of them, and they change over time because they're usually they'll engage in backbiting and pull down whoever's popular for too long, and then someone else will rise. But currently, Robin DiAngelo is a white woman who coined the phrase white fragility. Robin DiAngelo and Ibram X. Kendi are 2 of the high priests or shamans in this belief system at the moment. Ibram X. Kendi wrote Anti-Racist Baby, which is one of the most disgusting racist books and forms of indoctrination I've ever seen directed towards children. And not only is he celebrated and lauded for it, he just got $10 million from Jack Dorsey at Twitter. Twitter just gave him $10 million to spread his racism that he calls anti-racism, by the way. They're really great at branding. Hey, it's called anti-racism. I guess it's good, right?
Yeah. You're against, right?
Yeah, it's all in the name.
Yeah.
I've heard someone say, like, I guess these people only shop at Best Buy because they think it has the best buys. Like, they're really like, they just fall for the branding. But yeah, anti-racism, Ibram X. Kendi has said that it is impossible to be not racist. He offers this false dichotomy. He says, you're either racist or you're anti-racist with me, over here with me, anti-racist. Well, what's anti-racist? Oh, it looks a lot like racism. It involves judging and treating people differently on the basis of race. But it's okay because we call it anti-racism. No, you're just offering people 2 different kinds of racism. You're saying that it's impossible to be anything else. That's not true. What he's doing morally, I think, is just as evil as what someone like David Duke would be doing, a white supremacist would be doing. The difference is in the degree to which it is validated
Yes.
and lauded and supported and propped up by the mainstream. Can you imagine Twitter giving David Duke $10 million to spread his racism? But they'll give it to Ibram X. Kendi. It's just as atrocious.
Yeah.
And then anti-racist baby, this is the most recent news about him. Netflix just signed a huge deal with Ibram X. Kendi for 3 different programs, 3 or 4, to develop 3 different series or films, and one of them is anti-racist baby. Wait, can you imagine Netflix doing a deal like that with David Duke? Like, no, never. And rightly so.
Well, right. But the irony is they still hold up David Duke like he's somehow relevant. And I hear his name from time to time. Oh, that guy said something nice about David Duke. It's like, David Duke has 0 power.
Exactly.
He cannot be on any platform. I'm sure he can't bank with anyone. He's probably just got gold and cash somewhere, but the guy's an idiot who's irrelevant.
Yeah.
Yet on the opposite side of this, like you said, just as bad, these people control just about every institution, every form, outlet of power in media, certainly these days. And I also found it ironic that the last 4 years they were called the resist movement. And it's like, what could you possibly resist? You own everything.
It's the resistance brought to you by McDonald's.
Yes.
Brought to you by Procter and Gamble.
Yeah.
And
the revolution will be
Amazon.
Sponsored. Right.
Yes. That's great.
I want to ask you about leftism versus maybe social justice warrior ideology. Do you make a difference? Do you differentiate between the two? Because I kind of, and maybe mistakenly so, we can get into this, I always refer to leftism as a little bit of a religion as well. And I don't mean kind of the old school people who you might even categorize Tulsi Gabbard in that way, like who are genuinely anti-war, who are genuinely free speech, but believe in, I don't know, government owning certain means of production. I kind of mean the modern left. I look at that as a religion, and I also look at it as a supremacist movement, in that it doesn't seem like they want to stop until they run everything, and everyone who's a bad person is silenced and gone. Because, you would hear, well, we have to have gay marriage. Well, gay marriage is the law of the land now, and conservatives kind of went, okay. And then it's like, and now we have to have trans bathroom. There's never just okay, I feel good about kind of, we've fought this good fight. Let's kind of get along. It's always moves. The goalpost constantly moves. Let's remove a statue from this square. Oh, it's gone. Is that all? No. Now you've got to have these other, it just keeps going and going. Do you see that as well?
I do. And that's a good point you're bringing up, because a lot of it's really, I think, becoming very necessary for us to define terms, because we're living in such chaotic times where words are losing their meaning, or they're being misused, or people are they just have multiple meanings now. So a word like leftism, I have at times used it just very generally and broadly to describe anyone on the left politically. And then other times I've used it specifically to refer to social justice people. Mm-hmm. And now I'm considering just not using it very much, because people on the left who are not social justice, who are, I consider, actual progressives,
right,
have pointed out to me that, they consider themselves a leftist, but not social justice. So I don't know, lately I've been thinking I'm just going to try and stop using that particular word for a while until I figure out what I mean when I use it, and instead of using it in different ways. So I'm not answering this question very well, but what you're asking is, yes, the left, see, on the left, this whole, the social justice ideology has kind of merged with a lot of the neoliberal, career politicians, the elite part of the Democratic Party, the people who are fine with war, like the pro-war part of the party, the pro-corporation part of the party. And that seems like a weird marriage for some, but I don't really think it is. I think it's just that the elite politicians, or the neoliberals, they're paying lip service to whatever they see as popular. And this is what has taken over and become culturally dominant on the left. It's basically cannibalizing the whole left. And at times it sells itself as progressivism. It's not. It sells itself as liberalism. It's not. It's decidedly illiberal. Social justice people believe in censorship. We can see that's running rampant at the moment. They believe in censorship. That's not liberal in the slightest. They believe in violence. They believe in the initiation of force, which is the opposite of what Martin Luther King taught about. I mean, they're opposed to classical liberalism. They're opposed to individualism. They're collectivists. And so I'm starting to hear from more progressives, like actual progressives who are anti-war, who are anti-racism, and who can see this for what it is. They're starting to wake up, and liberals, classical liberals. And one silver lining of these, we've been going through these periods of acceleration, and we're in one right now. And during these ramping up, of the belief system, during these periods, I think a silver lining is that more people are able to see it for what it is. That's when I woke up. I woke up in 2016, 2017. It was a long process, but I noticed this ramping up happening after Trump was elected, and I couldn't understand it. And I also couldn't understand why he won. I was trying to figure that out. So, but that whole time period, that was a period of acceleration of this belief system. And that's when I woke up. Well, now I'm seeing the same thing 4 years later. Like just in the past week, Buck, I've had several people contact me. I've talked to people online. I've sat down and talked to people in person, people who are seeing all the censorship happening. They're seeing all the propaganda, and they're starting to, I think, in my opinion, wake up to this illusion of right left being so important. You know, they sell us this polarization to keep us fighting all the time, like over, are you right or are you left? And I don't really think right and left matters very much right now. It's like, are you authoritarian or are you an individualist? And if you're an authoritarian, I don't care if you're authoritarian on the right or the left. Right. Like, you're an authoritarian. Goodbye. Like, I'd rather talk to an individualist, whether they're conservative or liberal on the right or the left. Those are my people, because you believe in individualism. Right. And I think more people are waking up to that.
You said, you kind of hinted at there that there were certain things where you were thinking, wait a second, what's really going on with this? So was it an incremental awakening for you, getting out of this movement? Did you wake up one morning and you were like, what am I doing with this stuff?
No, it's not a fast thing. No, it's very incremental, like you said, and getting into it is incremental as well, because if at the very beginning, when I had started taking all these classes and learning about these concepts about like, white privilege and the new definitions of racism and sexism, they teach new definitions for a reason, by the way. Right. Yeah. But I started learning these things. You learn them bit by bit. If at the beginning they had said, and now you're going to defend censorship and violence against people who disagree, I wouldn't have joined, or I wouldn't have picked up this whole system of belief. It's a slow boil. And then getting out of it is slow too, because it's like leaving any cult. There's all this stuff that's set up within it to keep you from questioning and to fear leaving it. And for me, there were a few things that happened. Number one, I went down this rabbit hole on YouTube of videos it was videos of Trump supporters being attacked by people on the left, by people who are presumably on my side. And it was so emotionally upsetting to me and disturbing, because I had believed the opposite. I was really plugged into the propaganda machine, the whole legacy media machine, and people put their faith in the media. I used to put my faith in the media, and I believed, without any evidence, I believed just through opinion pieces and through headlines and through this massive propaganda, I believed that Trump supporters were violent, that they were causing violence at rallies. And then when I started watching these videos online, it was like video after video of people on the left attacking Trump supporters outside of Trump rallies with bricks, with eggs, with mobs. And I had not seen any of that being reported on. And so that was huge, because one, it was emotional. And I really think if you're going to wake someone up, it's hard to do, because you can give them all the facts in the world, but unless you appeal to their emotion, it's not going to have an impact. Like, have the facts on your side too, but you have to figure out how to talk to their emotional mind. And that emotionally just wrecked me. And then, so that was one thing. But then secondly, it made me question what I actually knew and understood about the world. So I had believed this one thing, and then I was seeing the opposite with my own eyes. And I was looking for videos of Trump supporters attacking liberals, and I couldn't find it. I found like one guy that kind of punched someone at a rally, but nothing like I saw the other way around. And so that shook me. And then shortly after that, I saw again something emotional. It was the Black Lives Matter Dallas protests where a sniper killed several police officers. And there were people in my self-selected social justice echo chamber online. There were friends of mine and people I knew, acquaintances, who were celebrating it to a degree and seemed to be fine with murder. You know, they felt like the ends were just, they didn't mind these awful means. And that blew my mind. And then I think the final thing, and this one really helped me, was someone had shared a video of Jordan Peterson with me, and they were calling him transphobic. And I went to his video expecting to hate on him and as a transphobe, and instead I came away with a completely different opinion. He didn't say anything transphobic to my mind. He was making an argument against compelled speech and being codified into law. And so I started watching more of his videos, and he was one of the first people who helped me to articulate what I was going through, what I was noticing on my side, and helped, you know, like when you first start trying to leave this cult, you're going to question if you're going crazy, because you're not just changing a policy position, you're changing your whole foundational worldview. You're getting rid of those glasses that you've been wearing and putting on every day. So it's really, it can be very scary, and it can be very confusing. And sometimes you're like, is it just me? What's happening to me? Am I really seeing this? And you are going to find people, if you're someone who's going through this process, or if you've gone through it, I know you can relate. You will start to find other people who've woken up or who've started to question. And then it kind of helps, because you're like, oh, I'm not alone. Like, this is, other people see this. So there were several things, and it was a long process. Even after I felt pretty comfortable in my opinions about social justice and how I had been wrong for 2 decades, and in my opinion that social justice was harmful, I still didn't talk about it or voice those opinions for about 6 months because I was too afraid. It took a long time.
What's up, guys? I would like to tell you about a wonderful small company that reached out to me to sponsor this show because they love the content. That company is Paloma Verde CBD and Organics. It is owned by 2 great people, Carlos and Vanessa Abalar, in my old town of San Antonio. They are libertarians, and honestly, the COVID lockdown was a bit of a blow to their brick and mortar location. But Carlos has assured me they are tough and will soldier on with business from people like my listeners. That is you guys. They will power on. I trust that for sure. Go check out their website at palomaverdestore.com, where you can find things like their amazing melatonin CBD gummies if you'd like to sleep a little bit better. You can find the sports cream if you've got achy muscles. I know you guys work out constantly. And they've even got CBD skin salve. Of course, they have the CBD extract tinctures for daily use. They have gummies for all occasions, including strictly vegan ones, if that is your thing. You guys know the great anti-inflammatory benefits of CBD. And by the way, all of their products over at Paloma Verde are THC-free. They've even got the studies on their website to show exactly that. And so check this out. I told you they're great people. They want to support my show. Here's what they're going to do for you guys. When you use promo code BUCK, B-U-C-K, you will get 25% off of any purchase over $75. You will also get 10% off of your first purchase when you sign up for their emails. So add that up. 25% plus 10% will give you a total of 35% off of your first purchase. You want to support a small libertarian-owned business and support my show at the same time and get a great product that you will love, go to palomaverdestore.com and use promo code BUCK, B-U-C-K. That is palomaverdestore.com, promo code BUCK. And I like this product so much, guys, that stay tuned. After this episode is over, I'm going to air a quick little interview I did with Carlos and Vanessa Albalar of Paloma Verde CBD. And you will see exactly why they are so great, what their story is, why they created the company, and exactly how good their products are. So stay tuned. After this episode, that interview will air as well. Let's get back to the show.
Well, on that note, you kind of wrote, at least I read it this morning. You wrote a wonderful piece called Waking Up to the Cathedral on Leaving a Cult of Belief. And this question will be twofold. First, can you detail for my listeners kind of what the idea of that piece is? And I'll get to the second part after that.
Sure. Like I said, I've been hearing from a lot of people in the past few weeks who are wondering what's going on in the world. And some of them are waking up to what I call the cathedral. A lot of people call the cathedral, which in my mind is the legacy media, big social, academia, major corporations, and the political elite of both parties. They're waking up to the propaganda that we're being sold, that we've been consuming, to this narrative that's being forced on our throats, and a lot of it having to do with social justice. And a lot of those people are liberals and progressives. And so I wrote that piece because talking with some of these people, especially like sitting down with them in person, and you see how emotional they are and how much grieving they're going through. And it reminded me of what it was like for me 4 years ago. Because now I'm to this point where, I'm pretty comfortable. I don't really care what people say about me. And all that's pretty, it's in the past, but it brought me back to what that felt like at the time. And my heart goes out to people who like that, and people I've corresponded with, because I know it is a slow process. And I was trying to write, in one part, I was trying to write to them and just say, it is worth it. And it does get easier. And yes, you are going to lose things. All those things that you're afraid of losing, you are going to lose a lot of those things. You are going to lose friends and maybe family, and you're going to lose some people that have known you your whole life, who you thought knew your heart. And you're going to feel a lot of pain, and because some people that you never would have suspected of doing this, some people are going to call you alt-right, Nazi, white supremacist, extremist. People are going to question if you've gone crazy. And sometimes at the beginning anyway, you might be tempted to agree with them or wonder if they're right, like you're going to question yourself, and that's okay. And yet you're still, if you're a person who is driven by a pursuit of truth or by trusting your gut, you're still going to walk through all of that, even when it's hard, because you feel compelled to do so. And, in talking with some of these people, I was thinking like, gosh, what would I have wanted to hear when it was the hardest, or when I was so afraid of what I was going to lose, and what I would tell myself, 4 years ago. And it is this: yes, you're going to lose some friends, but you're going to make better friends. And when you're in the middle of the mourning process and you're grieving what you're losing, you may not be able to see that because you haven't even met some of these people yet, but you're going to meet people who are open-minded, and you're going to form stronger relationships with people. And you're going to make stronger relationships with some of the friends that you don't lose, the people who stay in your life. You're going to find out who your real friends are. You may lose your job. You may choose, to leave it. I had to leave mine, but it's worth it. Like, I make a lot less money now than I did when I worked in entertainment, but I can't think of a price tag. There's no number of Bitcoin you could give me that would make it worth it to go back to that way of life, because you can't put a price tag on peace, having peace, liking yourself, freedom of thought, freedom of speech. You can't put a price on that. On joy, you can't put a price tag on that. And the more that you start to live authentically and to be honest about what you're thinking and about questions that you have and about, ideas, the more free you're going to feel, and the more you're going to like yourself. And I was talking about this with my Unsafe Space podcast co-host today, Carter, and he was pointing out, he said, like, some of those friendships that you're mourning or that you're afraid of losing are probably already over, because now that you've started to question things, you either have two options. You can be honest with those people, or you can hide yourself from them. And if you're hiding yourself from them, well, you've already fundamentally changed the relationship, because they're now interacting with like a false version of you. And so I guess I was trying to say, like, things will get better, and there's all these things that you're going to get on the other side of that fear that you have no idea about right now, when it's really hard and everything. So, just keep going. That's what I was saying. And also I was chastising. There's been a few people who were never in the cult of social justice, or maybe they've always been on the right or the conservative side of things, or maybe they've always been centrist, or I'm not sure. But I've seen some people say in the past 4 years, they'll have like this sort of angry response to people who are just now waking up. And it's not a lot of people. It's a very small portion of people, but I've seen it enough times that I wanted to say to those people, like, you need to have some compassion. This isn't like, everybody's discovering your favorite band in high school, and now you feel like you're not special anymore because they all like the same band. It's not like that. You're if you believe in individualism and you believe in equality, and you're against censorship, and you're against violence, and you should be happy when people wake up to your point of view. Right. And you don't want to be discouraging. You don't want to push grieving people who are just waking up. You don't want to push them away out of some kind of resentment or arrogance, or like a feeling of maybe wanting to be special or to have been right first. I think it comes from like a very frustrated place, that sentiment, but it's wrong, because it's counterproductive. And also, if you haven't ever left a cult of belief and you've never dealt with the fallout of raising your entire system of belief to the ground and starting all over from the ground up, like, you don't know how isolating that is for people, and the shame that is heaped on them, and all the friends that they're going to lose. You haven't been through that, so you don't even know what you're talking about. Like, be a welcoming place for people. Be a rock. Be someone who helps guide them if they're new to waking up. Don't push them away. If you're throwing a party, you should be happy, no matter how late people are to your party.
Well put.
You should be happy they came.
I had a second part all ready for that, and you.
Okay.
Well, you went over it wonderfully. I was just gonna say, if there are those listening that are kind of on the fence and like, I need to get out of this crazy thing, what advice would you give? But you just had a wonderful dialogue of just that. Is there any extra thing you would say that you maybe didn't touch upon there? Because I probably don't have a ton of social justice warriors that listen to this show, but I do. That I have a large circle of music friends. And so I know some of them probably secretly listen. Some of them message me sometimes. But anything else you would say to someone who's like, oh, this is crazy?
Well, I know there was on Twitter, there was an account that started called Musicians Against Wokeness, or Musicians Against Woke Ideology. I think it was Musicians Against Wokeness. And it was a group of musicians who were anonymous, liberals and progressives who were against social justice, and they recognize it as being illiberal. But they were anonymous for, as you can imagine, for good reason, because this is consumed a lot of the artistic world at the moment, anyway.
Yes.
And I think they may have gotten banned from Twitter, but you can still find some of these different groups. Yeah, you can still find some of the different groups for different states, because they also had separate accounts for different areas. And if anybody's listening in the music world and you are are alarmed at what you see happening around you, and you have questions about social justice ideology, I would encourage you, well, like I was just saying, follow your gut and follow the pursuit of truth. And the thing about art is best when it's pushing back against orthodoxy, I think, and offering a space. So artists get out there, typically artists get out there and create a space for people, like, and kind of push the boundaries. So everybody's a little bit more free culturally to express themselves. And when artists start to feel censored and start to feel like they have to self-censor,
Yeah.
things have gotten pretty bad. And so take a page from the artists who are rejecting woke ideology. I mean, in the comedy, I'm more familiar with the ones in the comedy world, but in the comedy world, you have people like Ricky Gervais, Dave Chappelle, John Cleese. There are comics who are saying, no way, like, I'm not playing this game. And that's really inspiring. And I'm sure there are some musicians who are not woke. None of them are coming to mind right now. A lot of them are very woke.
There are some, and they write me, and we've been friendly, and I've known a lot of them. But yeah, you'd be surprised. You'd hear some music, and then if I told you this person's woke, you'd be like, how does he make this kind of rebellious old school music? But I gotta get to this too. A lot of people that listen to this podcast are, we'll call it black pilled, or have a negative view of what's coming up with the next administration. You have to have some silver linings. I like to end up on some optimistic notes. And you kind of just said there's people kind of waking up, but that maybe this is like it was 4 years ago for you.
Yes. What
is some optimism we can end on?
You know, Buck, I should have asked you at the beginning if I was talking to a lot of black pilled people. Because there's some of the, Carter likes to say I'm one of the white pilled people, and that doesn't mean white supremacy. It means means I've taken the God pill or the hope pill. But I do have hope. I mean, because if I didn't have hope, I wouldn't wake up and do our Unsafe Space podcast. Why would I? I'd just go live in the mountains with my dog and keep to myself and do what I want. Like, I have hope because, well, first of all, I'm a pretty recent Christian, and I know some black pilled people are going to say, oh, she's just joined another cult, but I am a pretty recent believer, and I do believe in a higher power, and I believe there are things that I can't understand, and even in my personal life, there have been personal things that have nothing to do with ideology where I can't explain certain things, but I've trusted in God, and then I can understand a little more on the other side of that trust. And I think it's like that sometimes with society. Like in my personal life, I had to get to the darkest place imaginable before I could see the light. I got to a really dark place about 5 years ago. It was around the same time I started waking up. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a whole nother conversation, but I think that had a lot to do with why I was primed to kind of open my mind a little bit. Mm-hmm. But I think that can happen to a country. I think that can happen to a community, is that sometimes you have to get to a really dark place for there to be a glimmer of light. And even if you don't believe in God, just look at history. Humanity's been through really repressive regimes, and they've come out on the other side. And sometimes it's kind of crazy, but in the most repressive environments, that's where people start to find like meaning and truth and find out what's important. And, you know, I've been reading a lot of Alexander Solzhenitsyn lately. And, you know, if there's another guy, a friend of mine sent me some Orthodox Christian books, and I was reading about some other people who found God in the Gulag. Mm-hmm. And, you know, who went in as Marxists themselves and came out, and as atheists, and came out believers. And, you know, we are not being, at this point, we're not being rounded up and put on boxcars, and, you know, we're being put into digital gulags. We're being deleted from the public square online all wrong thinkers. Our Unsafe Space Twitter got banned a week ago today, and we still haven't heard from Twitter why. They haven't told us why. But that's not happening to us in real life. It could eventually. I don't know how far down the road, but I would say be grateful that we're not there yet, and then also look at the silver lining, look at the people around you. This is again why I say don't be so resentful or frustrated at people who are late to the party and who are just having their eyes opened. Be grateful that their eyes are being opened, and be that person who can help, be a friend for them when they don't have anyone. And the silver lining of repressive regimes is I think things become more obvious. Mm-hmm. Dystopia becomes more obvious, and I don't know. I have hope. I may not be articulating it well, but I have faith in people. Maybe not all people. I have faith in 25% of people.
Well, they say all you need is like 10% to basically move a mountain here. So 25 is pretty good.
25 is pretty good.
Yeah,
that's kind of a joke, because I was reading recently about the Asch conformity experiments. Have you read about those?
No.
So in the 1950s, they did these series of experiments, and they've done them several times since. And they basically were trying to study conformity, the nature of conformity in humans. And they did these really simple studies where they showed people, they would bring in a group of people, like maybe 6 people at a time, and they would show them a piece of paper with lines on it. And they would say, pick out the longest line. And it was always very obvious which line was longest. But 5 of the people would be plants, and they would pick the shortest line.
Yeah.
And then it would come to the 6th person, who's actually the person being studied. And 75% of the time, they would pick the shortest. They would go with whatever the group picked.
Wow.
They would deny their own eyes. Isn't that amazing? And it said only 25% of people never conformed. And at the first time I was reading about this, I was thinking, that's such a small percentage of people. I can't believe it. But now I'm starting to think, that's actually pretty high. I hope we have 25%.
Yeah. If we have 25% of the population on our side, then that's a huge white pill. But that's, and that's what shows like yours are helping push towards. So it's time for you to plug away at anything where they can follow you online or your podcast or anything.
Yeah, so you guys can visit, if you're interested, you can visit unsafespace.com. Like I said, we have a book club. You can join book club. It's free to join. If you want a reason, you want some pressure to get yourself to read more, you can join our book club. And you can find us on all the major platforms except for Twitter, because we've been banned. But you can find us on YouTube still, Unsafe Space, and anywhere that you listen to podcasts. So thank you so much, Buck.
Yeah,
having me on.
Thank you, Keri, so much. I'm going to, as always, link to all of that in the show notes page, all of those links. And Keri Smith, thank you for being here on Counterflow.
Nice to meet you.
I told you that was going to be a good chat. I know you enjoyed that. What a cool gal Keri Smith is, and I'm thankful that she was here and able to do that. I hope this is the kind of episode that you can share with someone who you think might be ready to get the hell out of that evil cult of social justice warriors. And man, it's going to be crazy over the next few years. We ought to take some bets here at Counterflow. You guys can join my Telegram group, get that app Telegram, and join Counterflow with Buck Johnson. Should we be taking bets on how long it is until Kamala Harris takes over? And I wonder if the SJW stuff will get worse, because Biden's that's not his thing, let's face it, but maybe he's so old and decrepit that they're just going to shove it on him. Anyway, we shall see. My bet, just for you guys, we can counter these bets, so to speak, if you want. My bet is by September of 2021. And I so for those of you who know me, you already know this, but I look at a lot of things timeline-wise in terms of football season. So I say by week 1 of the NFL season, Kamala Harris is president. That's my bet. You guys want to bet me on that one? Join the Telegram group and we can chat about it. And If you, a lot of people ask me, what websites do you read? Well, one of them that I always read, and it's updated fairly often, it's got wonderful articles, is thehopian.org for you guys who are fans of Hans Hermann Hoppe and his writings. Well, a lot of these authors on that site kind of take that philosophy and write about it and write in terms of current events and all of these kind of things. Thehopian.org, check those guys out. Great people over there. And let's see, you can reach me. Well, right now, I keep saying this. I promise you we are going to get the Counterflow website going. But until then, you can still find me at deathtotyrantspodcast.com. You can find me on Twitter at BuckRebel, BuckRebel. And until next week, share this episode. You guys have a great week. See ya.
You get split in fucking half, till I call him the hologram graph. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Like the sound of the Counterflow podcast? Our audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.
I want to tell you guys about a sponsor of this show, and that is a small business out of San Antonio, Texas called Paloma Verde. You can find them at palomaverdestore.com. With me here today to tell you about what they do, what they have, what they can offer you guys, it's Carlos and Vanessa Abelar. Vanessa, go ahead and talk to my listeners about what y'all do, what you sell, and why they need to buy it.
Okay. Hi, everybody. So basically what we sell is our premium grade CBD, broad spectrum CBD line. We have several products that can help with a variety of things that you might be suffering from or just need a little extra everyday support. So we have our curcumin soft gels. Those are a mixture of curcumin mixed with CBD. It's a perfect blend for anybody that has any kind of inflammation issues. If you're suffering, I mean, it's a wide range of things from arthritis. I mean, some people need it for, I mean, so many things, Crohn's disease. I mean, it's fibromyalgia. I mean, it's just like a very wide spectrum of things. And then we have our melatonin soft gels. Those will help you with your sleep. Our everyday soft gels, we have them in 10 and 25 milligrams. Those are perfect, like I said, for your everyday support. You're feeling a little anxious, you know you have a busy day coming up. Those are perfect to take at the beginning of your day and then again, you know, in the middle or something. They last about 6 to 8 hours, all the soft gels. We have our edibles, which is our gummies. We have strawberry lemonade and green apple. They're both delicious. And they last about the same time frame as the soft gels. And then we have our sports cream. That's great for anybody that needs that extra support when they're getting ready to go work out or when they come back. It's a great aid for them. Same thing with our salves. We have a few different kinds, but those will help you with just your muscle and joint pain. And they are just amazing, and they smell well, only 2 of them smell good, but one of them is unscented, but they work just as great, all 3 of them. And then I think that's pretty much it we have. But I mean, like I said, a variety of things. And yeah, so just if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to give them a little bit more information on them.
For my listeners that are wondering, well, does this work? I hear about this kind of stuff all the time. I don't know if I should try it. I don't want to jump into this world. You have a personal story on exactly why it works or how it works, because your father needed it, and that's how this kind of came about. Talk about that.
He did. We like to say that Paloma Verde is a labor of love for us. My dad was suffering from some chronic arthritis issues in his hands and in his feet, and then so we started to try and look for different things that could help them, because doctors just wanted to keep giving them medication. And so we tried to see what was the most natural route for them. And that's when we came across CBD, and we started to test out new products. We gave it to my father and then Carlos's dad as well, because he at the same time was suffering from another chronic issue. So we had them sample it. And we gave it also to other friends and family, just people that we know would give us good feedback, tell us the truth.
Honest feedback.
Honest feedback. excuse me. And so, within a few days, we would ask them, daily, how's it feel? How are you feeling? How are you doing? And, they were just like, good. My dad couldn't make a fist. It was really hard for him. When he started using the curcumin soft gels, I mean, he was like, I can, close my hands. And I was just like, oh, that's wonderful. So, and that was kind of what kicked it off, our dads. And so here we are.
Excellent. So Carlos, you are so cool to sponsor shows like mine. What will my listeners get when they enter code BUCK at checkout?
Yeah, so what they'll get is right off the bat, 25% off any product, anything they get off our website, palomaverdestore.com. Plus, if they're a first-time purchaser, they get an extra 10% off if they sign up for our email list. And then
that comes with free shipping.
Yeah, for free shipping, over $75 is to use the promo code, and it's on anything on the website. So your listeners on their first purchase can get 35% off, which is not very common in the industry. You might get your 10s, your 15s, maybe your 20s, but 25% off and extra 10, it's good savings. So we say this like, we fix up the packages. Vanessa's hands are on them. She fixes up these packages. You're not gonna get fancy shipping and stuff like that. We're giving the savings because we want to give the product out. We want to get the product into people's hands so they can try it out and see kind of if they can get some benefits from it.
Excellent. And that is at palomaverdestore.com. Promo code BUCK, B-U-C-K. Carlos and Vanessa Abelar, thank you guys so much for being sponsors of this show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been the Counterflow Podcast, a part of the Renegade Media Network.